Get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver, Proverbs 16:16. Peace comes when we ourselves are peaceful. The Bible is a book that most people take as a guide and consult it to find an answer to their problems. The answer to our problems is not outside ourselves, it is within ourselves. And although the Bible does help us to see the way, when we begin to understand ourselves, it is still outside ourselves. Jesus said, you read the scriptures and you think you have eternal life, you make a mistake. So we see the majority of people are always caught up with the idea that certain book or certain revelation will solve their problems for them, but it never does. It's never done and it never will, because the self is the problem. And until we understand the self and all the ways of the self, we can never solve our problems. That has been the trouble throughout the world. We're looking outside ourselves for our problems to be solved. We look to leaders, we look to this person and that, but you will see that our leaders are just a projection of our own ignorance and nothing more. And unless we can understand ourselves and transform ourselves then by seeing that which is false, we will never have peace, because peace comes when we are peaceful and not before. In the first book of Genesis, there is a statement which the prophet who wrote it knew what he was talking about. He shows that God saw that his work was good. The vine could see no flaw anywhere, and this perfect creation includes man. That perfect creation is ever present. You don't have to create it. People think that they have to become something, that they have to become this perfect creation. There is where the stupid things lie. They resist this so-called evil, and they try to become good. They try to create this perfection which the prophet has stated in the Bible. But that creation is perfect and remains perfect. It's not something that we can alter or change, but when we see the false, when we see our beliefs, our ideas, our antagonisms, and the things that create all these antagonisms, these various forms of ideas that we create in our own minds, when we see the falseness of these, they will just fall away from you. And what is that perfect creation that existed in the beginning, exists now, and it is there. It is like seeing a picture. And you look at that picture, you saw a painting. You scratch a portion of the painting and you see there's another painting underneath. You begin to wipe the paint on the surface off and more, and here a great masterpiece reveals itself. The masterpiece was there all the time. It was on the canvas from the beginning. But somebody plastered it over with a lot of paint. He didn't know the beauty of that masterpiece, so he thought he could create something better. So he painted over the top of the masterpiece. But when the individual who knows comes along, he begins to wipe off that covered the masterpiece that existed there all the time. And when he had completely cleansed of all these particles of paint that covered this masterpiece, they dissolved away into nothingness, and there existed the masterpiece. Well, the masterpiece of creation is man. Still exists. Man himself has covered us up with all these things, his cravings, his ideas, his antagonisms, his beliefs, which create all this trouble in the world. If you learn arithmetic, you will make a lot of mistakes in your calculations. And you continue to do so until you begin to know the law of mathematics. The law of mathematics is permanent. It isn't something you create. The law of mathematics is there all the time. It existed from the beginning and is the foundation. But an error has got no foundation. It has got no existence in itself. And when you find the error, it just dissolves away into nothingness, doesn't it? It hasn't a power of its own. It doesn't jump up and bite you. It just disappears. And the law of mathematics remains there, eternal and ever present as the foundation of pure arithmetic. But the trouble with most people is that they're giving this error a power that does not possess. It becomes evil, and then they begin to resist it. And by resisting it, they cannot understand it. You can't understand me if you condemn me, or can I understand you if I resist you? Therefore, the whole thing is clear when you begin to know that which is false, and you can never know the truth until such time as you know that which is false. And when you know what is false, you'll know the truth about it, that it is false, and that's all the damn thing that belongs to it. It's false, and nothing more. And when you realize that, then what will you do? Will you resist it? Will you kick it in the pants and all these sort of things? You will just let it go. And there, in the beauty of perfect creation that existed from the beginning, and the Creator saw no flaw in it. The divine could see no flaw. Therefore there is no flaw. There can be no flaw in the divine mind, which includes man, but as soon as man descends into the intellectual, he creates out of his own very limited understanding the errors that create havoc in his life. So it is the intellect that in the mind of man that this tree of good and evil grows. And you will note that it has only one root. It grows on one tree, the tree of good and evil, and exists on the same tree. They're not different trees at all. And that tree grows out of man's mind. Then the tree of life, which is perfect in itself, grows out of God. These true trees grow in the Garden of Eden, which is the garden of the soul of man. And when man sees then clearly these trees, he recognizes clearly that one is the tree of life that he must take hold of, which will be his salvation. While the other he recognizes as his own creation, then he is aware that he doesn't eat the fruit thereof, lest he dies in his ignorance. But the prophet naturally has put it in certain language to prevent those ignorant from recognizing the very truth about the thing until such time he grows out of his stupidity to learn the great secret that that which is perfect in itself remains perfect. That which was created in the beginning, being perfect, must be perfect now and must remain perfect. Otherwise, the infinite could not be infinite, because if there was any imperfection in the infinite, it would be impossible for the infinite to be infinite. So the world of error is man's conception of things, which is quite different to the divine creation, and that is the tree of life. If man can see for himself the falseness of his own conceptions, he would not hold on to them. If man cannot see the falseness of his own creation, how can he ever reach that which is divine? If you're caught up in the falseness of your own creation, if you have a certain belief, an idea, if you belong to a particular nationality, and you see in your own self that you are different to the other person, you create isolation instantly, do you not? You isolate yourself from your brother. Isolation, then, is that which creates all disturbances throughout the whole world. When we get rid of isolation, we will see then the cause of isolation. And when we see the cause of isolation, we'll get rid of these ideas that separate man from man. We have a belief, the Hindu. We have a belief, the Mohammedan. We have a belief, the Christian. We have a belief, the Jewish belief. We have all the other different beliefs. And what do? We quarrel about our beliefs, and when we cannot solve our problem, we butcher each other. Is there any sense in that? Is there any truth in that? When you see a belief as a belief, an idea as an idea, when you see a fact as a fact, then you begin to understand. But if you're caught up in your belief, in your idea or your ideology, then as sure as the sun rises in the morning, you're going to create strife because you see yourself different from your brother. Therefore you try to impose your ideas, your belief upon your brother. And he begins to resist those ideas. Therefore you have a quarrel. Before you know where you are, you're killing each other. The stupidity we see in the world today is nothing more than that. Look at it square in the face and see, and you will see that it is nothing more than that man will not see the falseness of his own ideas, his own beliefs, his own creation. If he did, he would fall away from him, and what would be that which is perfect in itself, created. Now, man does not have to create that which is perfect. Because he doesn't know what perfection is, anyhow. So how could he create something that's perfect out of his intellect? It's another impossibility. But in infinity, there cannot be anything else but perfection. And that perfection is the expression of the two pillars, wisdom and love. Unless you can enter between those two pillars, stand to the door of the temple, you shall not enter therein. So man's conceptions are the result of his ignorance, and because he does not know what is false, he cannot realize what is true. How can you realize what is true if you don't know what's false? You're trying to realize God all the time. You're trying to realize the fact that you're a child of God. You may say it 1,000,000 times, it makes no difference to you unless you realize the false. How can you be a child of God and you're caught up in the falseness of your own creation? Thus, the misdirection of his creative power of thought produces for him corresponding results, which he calls reality. In fact, there is nothing real about it at all, for reality is harmony, while man in his ignorance creates the reverse because he does not know what is false. Man now asks, how can we solve the present crisis in the world? Is there anything that the individual can do to stop bloodshed and the misery taking place? That's the question. And everybody is asking that question. And the answer is right here at their own door. No, but they expect Churchill to do it. They expect Eisenhower to do it. Or they expect somebody else to do it. Or a Stalin to do it. So when these don't do it, they invent new leaders. And these new leaders are nothing more than a projection of man's own ignorance. So how can they do it? What man sees in the world is just the result of his own everyday life. It is the outward expression of man's inward state. So man is responsible for the misery. If man is responsible, then it rests with man to put an end to all the misery. Man misdirects his thought power, and because he's caught up in his own action and reaction, he fails to see the truth of the divine nature of things. Yes, when you're caught up in your reactions, when you're caught up in your fears, your antagonism, your ideas, your beliefs, there is nothing else but your belief. There's nothing else but your antagonism. They're nothing else but your various political views, your various ideas of nationality. There is nothing else but that, and you are caught up in it, and you know nothing else. Therefore, how can you know the truth when you're caught up in all that which is false? When you enter into your mind and look upon these things clearly, impersonally, not being caught up emotionally, always condemning, or blaming, or resisting, then you will begin to know the truth. If you blame anything, you condemn anything, you resist anything, you can never find the truth, because you will never understand that which you are blaming and condemning and resisting. Man misdirects his thought power, and because he's caught up in his own actions and reactions, he fails to see the truth of his own divine nature of things. Man's intellectual nature, being steeped in error, he sees evil as a power in the world opposing good. So we have got two powers in the world, one is good and one is evil, so you've got to kill the one so that the other will live. You have to destroy this one. So you're out to destroy evil. So you kill a murderer. And do you not become a murderer yourself when you kill a murderer? Are you not a murderer too? By trying to stamp out evil, you destroy yourself. And that's exactly what the world is doing today. But if they could see what evil is, the creation of man's own mind, man's own reaction to things external to himself, being caught up in his emotions, caught up in his greed, in his craving, in his ideals. Ideals, no matter how good they are, they're all the same. They only work towards separation, and separation means destruction. Isolation means the destruction of the individual who isolates himself. Jesus was very plain when he said, you must love your neighbor as yourself. Resist not evil. The man sees that he is the evil himself in the world, and he will see how false it is. It will drop away from him. And there in the beauty, the grandeur of everything will remain that which is eternal and ever present. The love and wisdom of God, that which was created in the beginning, the Word that was in the beginning, and the Word that is now. What Word was God, and that Word is God, and that Word remains immortal. That is the immortality in man. So man's intellectual nature, being steeped in error, he sees evil as a power in the world opposing good. So he immediately tries to stamp it out, with the result that he creates more evil within himself. If you kill a murderer, do you not become a murderer too? If it is evil to kill, then you are evil if you condone it. Although you do not actually take part in the killing, you are still responsible, are you not? Think, and you will see that it is in your heart, even if you do not take part in the actual killing. If that killing is in your heart and you condone it, then you are a murderer. Nothing more, nothing less. In your heart it is so. For Jesus said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. If he did not understand himself and the self. If he had condemned them, he would have condemned himself. If he had condemned them, he could not free himself. He could not be free. If he condemned them, he could never see the truth, because he'd be living in the false. It means for man to see the truth, to free himself from it. If you're caught up in the evil in the world, how can you get rid of it? When you and I see what causes war, which is wholesale murder, and are interested in stopping war, then we must begin to transform ourselves, for we are the cause of war. We are the world. Each and every one of us is the world. Think it out and you will find how true it is. If we are interested in creating things to kill others, we cannot complain if we get killed ourselves. We do not get what we want, but how we act determines what we get. Our actions are none other than the self-projection of ourselves. So, what happens is the projection of ourselves. How then can we stop all this misery unless we transform ourselves? The intellectual error is that there is a power called evil opposing good. So we outpicture the error, which results in the destruction of mind, body, and circumstance. So we see the other person is in error, but we do not think that we are in error ourselves. So we are out to kill the other person which we see in error. We call it evil. So we are out to stamp it out, to destroy this person, and so forth. We do the very thing to ourselves. We destroy ourselves. Because of the fact that your neighbor is yourself. In the light of the fact that God is infinite in nature, and He created the human being, the human family, as one whole, with the Christ principle permeating the whole of the human race, which was the Word that was in the beginning. And therefore, it is logically true that your neighbor is yourself. Then to destroy your neighbor, you must destroy yourself with him. Who is the victor? Who is the vanquished? We saw it in all the wars that ever happened. Could you say that the victors of the First World War were the Allies? Would you say that the victors of the Second World War were the Allies? Is there any victory now? What state is the world in today? And this was a war to end war. But I tell you, a war can never end a war, no matter how great it is. I'm pointing to a man, the man of Galilee, irrespective of what nationality he was, he had none. No matter whether he was born a Jew, he saw the great universal spirit, and in that was the life, the Christ principle. And unless there's this same principle, of which the Master showed and demonstrated right through the whole of his life, there can be no saving of the race. We are now on the brink of a catastrophe. Do you think that we can stop it now? I don't think so. And no sane man thinks either, because man is headlong into the abyss for his own destruction, because he will not see clearly. Because man will not transform himself. He will not see the falseness of his belief. So I show you the different beliefs in the world today. I show you the different ideologies in the world today. I show you the different nationalities in the world today. I show you all these things that are false. And yet, do you take consideration to it and realize that it is false? Or do you just go on condoning all that's taking place in the world? I had a man in today. He was a Sunday school teacher. He asked me for advice. Well, I gave him the advice he needed. But when he went away, he was no longer a Sunday school teacher the way he was before, because he would see that he was conditioning all the children according to his own conditioning. He wasn't freeing them, but was conditioning them by his own belief. He wanted to solve his own problem. He couldn't solve his problem because he was caught up in these things. But when I showed him how false these things were, then the whole thing cleared before him, and he smiled and saw that he was free. It's a freedom that comes with understanding, with seeing the false. Then he knew that that which is true always existed, and he was that. He didn't have to become something. He was being now. So we give error a power it does not have. There is no truth in error. What is our deepest thought? Is it not a belief in something that we are afraid of? We are afraid of God. We're afraid of death. We're afraid of everything. Fear is born in us through our parents. The fear then comes from the things external to ourselves, and we're caught up in fear when we see the falseness of it, the cause of it, then it passes away. You have faith and fear together. You have faith one moment, and you're afraid the next moment. Then you try to repeat a few mantras. You try to bolster yourself up, and you have faith again for a few moments. And then when that dies down, up comes this fear again, living in opposite. Oh, what a terrible state of affairs. Whatever good is in your mind, no matter what it may be, mantrams empty the good out of it and put evil in its place, put error in its place. For the simple reason is this, that every time you express a mantram, you're creating the idea of the opposite. And the more ardent you are in expressing your mantrams, the stronger does the opposite rise up against it. Not until you see the foolishness of these things, the falseness of these things, or the mind. To know what's made up in your own mind, to show what you're doing, the formulations of your own mind, your own creation, are blotting out that beautiful perfection, that divine creation that existed in the beginning, that came now. So man's conceptions bring forth his misconceptions, with the result that he destroys himself. What is it then that causes all this strife and misery in the world? It cannot be anything outside man himself. For what is outside man has no power of its own. Man's own action and reaction that operates from within himself that causes all this strife and misery. Therefore man is the cause, no matter how he tries to put the blame elsewhere. We are only trying to escape the issue that we ourselves are the cause. It's a wonderful thing we try to excuse ourselves all the time. But it's very necessary to be absolutely honest with oneself when we are discerning the self and understanding the self. We've got to see clearly what the self is doing. We've got to see our thoughts, our movements, and the movements in our mind. We must see all these things clearly and distinctly, without condemning, without blaming, impersonally, without attaching yourself or identifying yourself with them. In that identification of anything, then you become it. But if you see the formulations of your own mind, your own creations, as you look at a piece of pottery that you created, it is just the same. If you created a piece of pottery and you saw that it was perfect, you never create another piece of pottery that you see that was imperfect. You will say that one is good and one is bad. They are both your own creations, both of them. Therefore you must understand the good and the bad are your own creation. Therefore man is the cause, no matter how he tries to put the blame elsewhere. We have different religions, different political views, we have different nationalities, different ideologies. We try to impose our views on others. We give ourselves an exalted status because of our nationality, our position. We have an inferiority complex because we feel that we are inferior to another, and so forth. And because we have this inferiority, we create antagonism. Anything you feel inferior to, you begin to resist. And when you begin to resist something, you create antagonism. So therefore, if you feel inferior, you feel antagonistic to the other person you feel inferior to. But it's in the formulation of your own mind. There is one creation. The divine thought was perfect. We all have different approach to God, and because of all this, we have no goodwill towards each other. Do you or not think now that that is very foolish? Because of our belief and our approach to God, our different approaches to God, we haven't got goodwill towards one another. Don't you think it's very stupid? Any sane person would think it was very stupid. But the majority of people are insane. The world is a gigantic lunatic asylum. That's all it is. When a man is really sane, they put him inside. Lunatic asylum. Because of our ignorance, we are unable to think for ourselves, so we are fed on beliefs, ideas, dogmas, nationalism, etc. Therefore, we breed discontent, which leads to conflict. As human beings, we must either pursue a path of constant and continuous conflict with the result of our everyday action, or else see the cause of all this misery and turn our backs upon it. If we had no belief that goodwill, love, and consideration between us, there would be no war, no strife, no misery. So if we see what causes ill will, we can dispose of it surely. But oh no, you do not see it at all. You're caught up in your belief. You're caught up in your different ideas. Today there is a general election coming on. You will see the greatest amount of ignorance ever expressed in the world. You will see in the next month or so. By people who knew better, by people who go to church every Sunday, by people who pray to God, who put on a black coat with a Bible under their arm and walk along very slowly and so forth. And then on Monday become devils once more. I hope you see how stupid it is. If you don't, then you will never know the truth. Mind and matter are passive in nature. Matter being grosser form of mind, which form takes place in the physical plane through the agency of thought action. If we can see from whence our thought action arises, we can dissolve it. Then the divine Creator would manifest because it is. We do not have to create it. What we create is the evil that arises out of our own ignorance of the truth of our being. Therefore, evil does not oppose good. For when we get rid of one, we get rid of the other. There are both intellectual creations of man's mind in opposition. That is to say, that man is living in opposite. Therefore, he lives in good one moment and in evil in the other. You cannot say that the infinite is good because there is evil. You cannot say that in the infinite there is evil because there is good. But infinite being infinite, there can be no outside the infinite. There can be no other substance but the infinite. There can be no other life but the infinite. Therefore, if there is evil, the infinite must be evil. But don't you see, the evil is an error. It's like an error that gets into the sum. It doesn't really exist at all, except in the mind of man. And when you correct the error, it dissolves away and leaves that foundation which is perfect there. What we create is the evil that rises out of our ignorance. What is unpleasant for man he calls evil, and what is pleasant he calls good. But in the divine creation there is neither. If we have good, we must have evil. Then we live in the world of opposites, which is of our own making, and thus we become confused. I could see the people, how they are confused when I listen to a radio, of a religious radio talk that comes over the air sometimes, and I listen to such drivel and nonsense that one could wonder why a child couldn't understand that it is dribble. And the whole thing is that the people are caught up in this and fed with this throughout the whole of the world today. I hear one person saying, this is the only religion, the only way you can reach the Father. Oh, good gracious me. When the Father is ever present, and is always wanting to express himself through you, it's not the way. There is no such. There is no single way or any way at all. God is. That's all it is. And he doesn't require anybody else to show you the way to him, because he's the very center of your being. He's the very essence of your life. When we are confused, we want a leader, but our leaders are but the projection of our own ignorance. Jesus said, the blind lead the blind and they all fall into the ditch. When we reach a true state of understanding, we will see the cause. We will no longer be blind to the causes in operation, for we will not be caught up in them. Then we will know the meaning of, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. We will then see the great diseases, the great evils in the world today, our desire for power, position, prestige, the worship of different flags, the worship of different religions, the worship of different dogmas, and all that leads to war and misery. If we are smitten by any of these diseases, we'll build a society that will end in destruction. So you see, it depends upon us, but no one seems to realize it. Is it not a fact that most people look to a leader, a new president, a Stalin or a Churchill and all the rest for a solution? But it does not depend upon others. It depends upon ourselves. If once we felt the responsibility of our own actions, how quickly we could bring to an end this appalling misery. But you see, we are indifferent because we do not want to be disturbed. We have 3 meals a day. We go to work in the morning. We come home in the evening. We read our newspaper. It becomes the Bible to us. And we believe what is written in it, when it's all a pack of lies. So we don't want to be disturbed at all. Oh no. What is the use of having peace talk and the like if we, the cause of this misery, do not transform ourselves through understanding the cause? We must be created in God because there is nothing outside him. Therefore, man must be created out of the substance of God because there is nothing else. Divine intelligence, being perfect, must reflect its own perfection. And this is the only reality. And this exists now. It doesn't have to exist tomorrow. It doesn't come in tomorrow. That's not today. Because if it is not now, it never will be. An error has no power of its own, and when corrected, disappears into nothingness. When we see the error, we can correct it, and it dissolves away. And what is left, that which is always is, which reflects its own perfection. We can never solve our problem if we do not understand the problem which is ourselves. What we are trying to do is to solve our difficulties while we maintain our confusion, our different beliefs, our different nationalities, our different ideologies, our greed, our craving, our prestige, etc. So we try to solve our difficulties while maintaining the cause of our difficulties. Is there any sense in that? Of course there is not. Nobody seems to see it. The masters see it. The masters know it. People say, why do the masters not come out into the world and tell us the truth? I'm telling you the truth. When we see that we have brought about our own misery by our own beliefs, etc., we will let them drop away from us. Then we'll become aware of our true nature, and our limitations, our confusion will disappear. When we begin to understand the mechanism of our thought, our reactions, etc., we will see how we have reacted to error, and by doing so have established error in our lives. Great prizes are awarded to those who can discern all this. We must be one pointed in regard to life itself, which is man's createdness. When the sun's rays pass through a magnifying glass and is focused one-pointedly on an object, it will dissolve it away. So it is with the discernment of our thought, action, and reaction, brought about through our own beliefs, etc. We will see the causes within ourselves and not outside us. We will realize that our creative power is one with the creative power of the universe. Then it is, Thy will be done, not mine, O Lord. If we conceive that which we formulate in our own minds is not reality, then reality will reveal itself. But before we can break down this confusion, we must become aware of it and know what it is and how it comes about. If we isolate ourselves from one another through our beliefs, our creeds, our nationalities, our ideologies, we could never have true relationship, which is freedom. We must become aware of this isolation to break it down. No matter how we try to escape from the misery, we cannot do so without understanding it. We could never escape from the confusion and misery until we understand it from every angle. Then we will see that we ourselves are the cause. All the revolution we see going on in the outer is utterly useless unless the inward revolution has taken place. To rely on others is utterly futile. What will bring peace in mind and body and circumstances is inward transformation. This will lead to outward transformation, and there is no other way. Peace will come when we ourselves are peaceful and not before. When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Proverbs 16:7. Benediction. O beloved peace, if thou art always present, why dost thou hide thy face? Thou didst answer me in the silence of my mind, when all the noise of the outer died down. Yet I did not heed thy word, given by the Master of Masters, when he said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It was only when I discerned my mental makeup that I saw the error of my way. Now, O blessed peace, I have dissolved all that held thee from me, and I found how true thy words were. Peace will come when thou art peaceful and not before. Now I am one with thee, O blessed